Well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar where we will be discussing reinventing the PMO in an age of disruption. My name is Doug Welsby, and I'm the channel manager here at Wickersoft. I'm also joined by my colleague, Richard Evans, our Director of Advisory Services. During today's webinar, attendees will be on mute and the line will not be open for questions. However, feel free to use the GoToWebinar question feature to submit questions. I will address these questions during the webinar and will respond via email if we do not get to your specific question. If for some reason you get distracted or pulled away from the webinar, no need to worry, as I will be emailing a link to the presentation once it has been posted to our YouTube channel. I'll now turn the presentation over to Richard, who will be handling the webinar.
Excellent. Thank you, Doug. Welcome, everybody. I'm Richard Evans from Wickersoft Advisory, and so my job is to help people plan and execute change. And today we're talking about how the modern age of disruption and all that goes with that leads to a need, but also an opportunity for PMOs to reinvent themselves in that environment. We'll be looking at what that so-called disruption business challenge actually looks like, what it means. I'll take you through 5 steps you can take, 5 capabilities to evolve or develop that can be done in a gradual and uncontroversial way. And we'll tackle this subject of, are we moving into a world where there are no more projects, and tackle that question. The business problem or business challenge, as we are hearing it so often today, goes something like this, that we have executives saying, as an organization, generally, we need to move faster, deliver quicker, because product life cycle times today are so much shorter than they were some years ago, so products have to get to market. They only have a short lifespan. Same goes for projects and initiatives. We need to be more proactive about finding solutions for business problems and digitizing. We need to be more innovative. So that's a pretty common set of statements. And then from a PMO point of view, we're saying, yeah, that makes sense. How do we perform and transform? How do we keep delivering all of this very difficult body of work we have already and transform ourselves without breaking anything in the process? What's that crawl, walk, run look like? And also some uncertainty as well about what is the role of the PMO in the future? What do the roles of everybody in the project organization look like too? There are 5 things we'll look at that are capabilities the PMO can invest in or gradually move into or take leadership on. Becoming more of an agile PMO, getting involved in strategic planning, getting involved in shaping and defining and nurturing the new talent that's needed in the new organization, transformation management skills, and adoption and change leadership skills. Starting with, what does it mean to become an agile PMO, or more agile, more dynamic, let's say, in response to some of these business changes going on? Everybody's situation is different. This is a very common set of statements, if you like, that we hear a lot today, but everybody's starting from a different place. Most organizations today, the research shows, most, over 50%, are practicing some degree of agile project management, but that's often confined to IT, perhaps, and also they will have projects of other kinds, initiatives, where they don't want to put a methodology around, and that's fine. They want to keep it simple, and then they'll have projects following some other kind of method too. This is pretty common. We'll have probably lots of different information systems and tools being used, which doesn't necessarily help with all of this. Meanwhile, we've got, the bigger picture, executives asking us to transform. what should we do next without attempting to boil the ocean? A good thing to just step back and reorient around is, yes, Agile can help with this challenge of being quicker, bolder, faster, better, whatever however you define it. It's good to look at how some of the scaled Agile approaches think. It's important, I think, that you see Agile as a mindset rather than a strict methodology. And if you go back to the principles behind Agile, and specifically here I'm looking at the principles behind some of those Agile methods that talk about scaling Agile, growing and scaling Agile at an enterprise level. What are some of those principles to build on? And they're all pretty good and common sense. Taking an economic view of work and initiatives, meaning benefits and investment levels, delivering incrementally, quickly in short cycles, that all helps. Having milestones with objective measures rather than milestones that say documents complete, having objective measures of something that actually works, so you're committed to visualizing and seeing a working thing. Another one is visualizing work in progress. Cross-domain planning, super important. I call this the concept of team of teams, meaning we don't operate in small teams of project delivery people in silos, but rather from time to time we have these face-to-face cross-domain connection points. And perhaps really interestingly at the end there, to be effective as an organization, there's this acknowledgement that the secret sauce today is your people, in terms of locking into how they are motivated, ensuring that there is meaning, they find meaning in their work, and also that they're given some empowerment to make decisions on their own as small teams and individuals, and that these two things at the bottom here are actually key to enabling this speed and innovation that we're talking about. If you look at scaling Agile and read up on these methodologies for scaling Agile at the enterprise level to help you with this, there's lots of information out there. It can be very overwhelming though. So what are the first steps into this that can be safe before you try and take the whole thing on? One simple and obvious, I suppose, starting point is to build your own manifesto, if you like. That involves commitment to the principles, commitment to an Agile mindset, and a beginning of iterating, designing the future model for the project organization, including its governance. And so there are three simple things, I think, that work well to get started. One is assembling a group of thought leaders, including the PMO, to start iterating on this future organization model. You won't get it perfect first time. Secondly, try a bottom-up approach. Use representatives from all delivery teams, not everybody, but just representatives from those teams, to shape this as well. They can find a live project to scale and make something real out of this as well. Ideally, a big initiative where there's cross-domain interaction, so we can try out this concept of team of teams and working across groups, breaking down those silos. This delivery team group can also be working on things like defining terminology. Do we call things a project going forward? What do we call this? What do we call that? And also defining the team interactions, the cadence, the agendas for this cross-functional team planning. Third, probably most important, but also most often overlooked in these scenarios, is defining the metrics for this whole thing. So the reason we would consider going Agile or scaling Agile comes back to where we started, which is, hey, you've got to be bigger, faster, better. And having metrics for that are super important. So if for example, our primary goal is we have to deliver things faster, let's define what we mean by faster, so that as we start easing into this new way of working or this new model, we actually know how we're going to measure that quarter by quarter. Another thing that is you are able to start doing immediately without breaking anything is starting to look at this idea of visualizing demand. And there's this agile concept of a Kanban board, which is very powerful to help this idea of prioritizing work and enabling people to make decisions on work, and also having good metrics around proposed work. So in this case, visualizing demand for teams working on programs or solutions in the organization, we would have the ability to see all new crazy ideas in the funnel on the left, see the things that are being analyzed and having economic metrics and things applied to them, all the way through to whatever we're releasing. Something that can be done today. Ideally, do this digitally, but if you can't do it digitally immediately, then put it up on a wall somewhere in a corridor. Second capability for a PMO to get a grip on, if you're not doing already, is this important subject of strategic planning. And everybody, again, is starting from a different place here. I work with organizations, project organizations, that say, we have no prioritization, really. We just have this constant set of demands coming in from customers, whoever they may be, and we react to them. Others have a more mature way of prioritizing work. And when I talk about strategic planning, I'm talking about, yes, how you prioritize work, but also subjects like capital and financial planning and resource capacity planning and strategy planning. Now, what I'm always looking for is how do you get started on this subject if you're not already embedded in it? And there's two things here, two steps here that work whether you already have some quite mature approach to planning going on, whether you have very little and you're starting from scratch, but also critically, if you are embarking on scaled agile, meaning you're getting into how to manage portfolios of work using agile principles. These two steps work for all of those situations as a first foray into doing this. And one step is defining the strategic themes in the organization as they would apply to projects. So here's where you're developing a set of themes and frameworks against which we can measure things and prioritize things, but in a way that allows us to take organizational strategy and articulate it so that we can align projects to it. Secondly, defining portfolios of work. So we think about the different portfolios of work we have, define those in terms of value propositions. What's the business benefit of this portfolio? What's the business vision for this portfolio? That should be based on the strategic themes. But also, what are the investment levels, the strategic investment level targets? How much should we be spending in this area? How many people should we be assigning to this area? And what are the economic benefits of this portfolio as well? And often when I talk with organizations, they may already have portfolios defined. Sometimes they need rethinking. Sometimes a portfolio could be, well, we have our projects that are less than $100,000. Then we have another portfolio which is $100,000 to $500,000, and then our third portfolio is $500,000 plus. This approach helps you get into rethinking that and perhaps having a portfolio that's around business growth initiatives, one that's around taking cost out of the business initiatives, efficiency, a third one about maintenance perhaps. So this exercise can be done straight away, and it's a very helpful one to build on strategic planning capabilities and start rolling in the direction of scaled agile approaches too, that really help get you into dynamic, rapid fire rolling planning as well. This is the precursor to that. And yes, following this, there are some steps if you go into an agile direction around defining things like value streams. But that implies reorganizing all of your people differently, perhaps. So it's not necessarily something you do straight away. However, you can think about portfolios differently. What are our capabilities in the organization, our core business capabilities for the future? Maybe we define our portfolios in that way, and that will help us define value streams later too. Another thing that can be done as a first step, without breaking anything for strategy planning, is go back to this principle of make work visual, so you can prioritize it, and just having it visual helps these conversations. So again, this is looking at a slightly different kind of Kanban board, because here we're looking at not capabilities within solutions or programs or projects. Here we're looking at strategic initiatives. Same concept there. We've got ideas coming in on the left that we can all see and look at. We've got things being analyzed, having criteria, metrics, and economic benefits attached to, and we can see the stuff that's in the queue waiting to happen. All of this enables getting into a more dynamic, rolling planning, faster mindset. Third focus area is around talent. So there's increasingly a question mark around what is the future project manager and project people and project organizations and so on. What does that all look like? And the skills are changing somewhat, and the expectations for people delivering initiatives are shifting too in this new world. And I think there are two areas where pragmatically, the PMO can play an important role. So one thing is to be involved in skills planning. So I mentioned that there's an expectation that the skills needed for the future to deliver things in this disruptive, fast-paced world are slightly different, and then that ties into agile thinking as well. But let's just take an example of one role in the project delivery organization, the project manager, and how that's changing. In the past, we've always thought of project managers as people strong at methodology, strong at rigor, getting things done and kicking butt in the organization and so on. We reward and like all of those things, and they probably have a project certification too. Now we're looking at an evolution of those skills, where one of the things that's super important perhaps is understanding the potential of technology and when to apply it. That we would like project managers who can be proactive, look at a business problem and say, have you thought about using artificial intelligence to solve that? Additionally, what we value more today compared to, let's say, methodology is if we're digitizing our business, we want people who really understand that business, that industry, that customer set. We also value business change skills. And then there's this idea of servant leadership. So in dynamic organizations and ones using Agile specifically, if you're using Agile, you have no project manager. You possibly have somebody called a Scrum Master. And the Scrum Master looks a bit different from a project manager, because they're primarily not kicking people's butts. Primarily, they're supposed to be coaching and removing roadblocks. It's a slightly different style of leadership. And of course, to make all of this work, we need great business sponsors of initiatives and projects. And those people are going to need training and coaching too. That's another thing that PMOs are in a good place to lead on. So skills planning is about taking charge of looking at the people we have in the delivery organization, thinking through what we need in the future, starting to map people from the current state to these future roles. They might have different names and slightly different things, but there's a place for everybody in this future state. And that is part of skills planning for the future. The second thing is this idea of community of practice. Simple idea, probably already doing this, which is for these new roles that we're defining, and for the old roles that are migrating, let's set up communities of practice for the roles, but also an overall community of practice, a team of teams for people to connect together as well, and that these groups are all about collaborating, learning, and thinking about things like lunch and learns and so on. So building, owning, and fostering the community of practice, because that's key to helping everybody change and get better for this new business driver. Number 4, nurturing, developing, being known for managing transformation, business transformation skills. There's research surveys out there today showing that while the biggest change initiatives in most organizations today have the title of blah blah transformation, some kind of transformation initiatives, that the people often leading and executing aren't necessarily from the project management community or have a background in project management. So there's this opportunity for PMOs to help define that capability and lead on that. And what are some of the things I'm thinking of here? Well, let's look at a few things that transformation initiatives often need help with. One is a metrics and economics focus. That's often sorely lacking, and PMOs are good at putting metrics around things and quantifying economic benefit too. That whole subject area has to change as well, because with shorter product life cycles now, old measures such as return on investment don't necessarily work because they can take 2 years to measure, and you don't have that amount of time. So you need to be creative about looking for modern metrics, leading indicators of value, and modern accounting thinking. Strategic alignment. So many initiatives don't get properly aligned in terms of their overall logical mission, how they align back to those strategic themes and how they're fundamentally going to be measured. And then secondly, the human alignment, getting all stakeholders and people aligned around the purpose of the thing. Because if you get both of those wrong, which often happens, initiatives end up going slower as they try and course correct. So that's another capability area PMOs can help with. Lean and modern processes. So this is just about methods and techniques. That applying lean program management helps you do things quicker. So there's the idea of delivering in shorter increments and being quite strict about that. So that's a methodology guidance thing. And coaching sponsors, executive sponsors, very important in transformation. They don't necessarily have a background in, those sponsors don't necessarily have a background in leading complex change. PMOs might. So there's an opportunity to create some kind of executive sponsor training, coaching, and guidelines. 5, adoption and change leadership. So here I'm talking not about how you manage change to an initiative, change requests or projects. I'm here talking about the leadership of adoption and change, because so many projects and initiatives, especially the big ones, rely on customers or internal employees using something new or doing something new. And there's a bit more of an interest today in this subject of leading change, because as we're moving faster, the weakness here is showing up. And there's this legacy thinking that change management is largely solved by training, so you figure that out at the end. And this, of course, is absolutely not the case. That good change management, to get things moving and adopted quickly, is a process that has to start early on, ideally back to what I was saying before around strategic alignment and alignment of purpose. It begins there with the message and the metrics there, and then is baked into every step of the program and its cadence, and everyone plays a role in it. So this is a framework the PMO, I feel, should own going forward. There's good methodologies that help give some guidance around this. The ProC-ADCAR model that I've listed there on the right is one of those that is very helpful. What does this all mean about the future of projects? Are we going into a place where there'll be no more project managers, no more projects? The answer to that is yes and no. Yes, as companies embrace things like Agile in order to be more dynamic and creative and innovative, that term is going to be heard less and less, the term project manager, because there's a slight difference in roles and titles and things. And also, of course, perhaps more importantly, this idea of a continuous flow of work, that we don't just have organized around projects to start and end, but we have an ongoing flow of work in the organization that is managed by a team of teams with continuous cycles attached to it. So yes, the word project and the expectations of who the best people are to deliver projects, that is changing for sure. But what isn't changing is the need for strategic alignment and delivery and the ability to drive change. In fact, it's needed more than ever because the stakes are higher and things have to move faster and the competitive scene is more aggressive. So we do need guidance around becoming a more agile organization. We do need a PMO type structure, maybe called something different, to create the framework for that. We will need expertise in strategic planning more than ever. We will need skills and talent aligned to the future. We will need managing transformation skills, and we will need adoption and change leadership skills. So all of these things are actually more important than ever and are great things for PMOs as they perhaps redefine their organization and their title. These are all things that can be confidently invested in for the future. Well, thanks very much for joining us today. If you have questions or follow-up, feel free to ping me, Richard Evans. My email address is there, or through our website, contact us at wicrosoft.com. That's our email there. We do have various solutions around some of these themes. That includes a very simple thing, which is a one-day workshop to help you create an action plan on some of these themes too. So please feel free to ask questions and reach out, and enjoy the rest of your day.